live from Twitter. This is the Twitter space of the Fighting 5-Foot Irish Nothin Faithful show. We had so much fun doing this last year, a combined show of 5-Foot Nothing Pod and the Fighting Irish Faithful show. And let's do it again because it's the end of the season and it's time to bullshit around. This is Joe at Faithful_Irish on the Twitter, and I am accompanied by my co-hosts tonight.
You've got Michael, who's out in West Coast Irish land. Red Snapper, 9098.
Your mic is literally cutting out at the most key point.
Really?
No. Oh, this is not good. Well, we're joined with 5-Foot Nothing Pod while he gets his shit sorted, so that's fine. Right. So let's see. Notre Dame ended the season 9-4, above the rim of kind of what is the average for a new coach at a good program. A little below some people's expectations, but I think they're realistic, and it was kind of an up and down roller coaster. So it is what it is, and that's where we are. But tonight we won't do too much reflection on this year's season, maybe some individual players or some position areas. But we wanted to do a recap of the national championship game, TCU versus Georgia. And there's not a whole lot of excitement to break down unless you just like watching points on the scoreboard look more like a basketball score for one of the teams. But simultaneously, I could not help, and Twitter was all over this, where you had all sorts of feedback from people and a lot of conversations bringing up 2012. So I kind of want to do a little dissection of both games. It's been 10 years since Notre Dame got their ass kicked on national television by Alabama. Not that we're trying to punish ourselves again, but I think it's worth talking about. So we'll open it up to 5-Foot Nothing. Hopefully his music, or excuse me, his microphone came back.
I think you probably got me now.
Much better.
All right. Okay, so, I will say with the national championship game, I don't know if anyone knows this. I heard it, so I'm going to share it. The 58-point differential was the largest in the history of college football in any postseason game ever. Now, I say that because I don't know if they're counting the national championship as a bowl game, but dating back to the 20s, whenever bowl games started, that is the largest margin of victory in the history of postseason college football, and it was the national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the game, they had thrown up a stat, and it was at the top of the list, but they had the biggest point spread differential for the Natty. And, of course, the 2012 game was on there against Alabama. But, it was kind of surprising just how big and the deficit difference was.
I mean, to put things in perspective, I went as far back as at least to the Kelly years, and I did this analysis a few years ago, but the worst margin that Kelly ever lost to any team is his time as a Notre Dame coach was to USC in 2014. We lost by 35. So that kind of puts in perspective. We lost, of course, by 28 to Alabama.
But we had too many. See, the thing was, we never got a 58-point blowout, which that's good. But we also, I wouldn't say it might as well have been 58, but there were several games that we were so uncompetitive, but it never looked like that. And I'm not saying, that's not, good thing we didn't look like TCU. But what I was going to lead into is, for all the people that are against the 12-team playoff, because you keep seeing these blowouts in the semis.
Who's against it?
Well, enough people are.
No, it's people saying they want 8 instead of 12.
Well, just their comments typically are, well, there's going to be so many blowouts. There's going to be so many blowouts. That may happen, of course. But
how's that different from the regular season, right?
Exactly. But more importantly, let's just say, because as much as we don't like Michigan, I think we can all acknowledge Michigan was probably the better team than TCU. TCU just happened to beat them. Okay?
I will never acknowledge that. Sorry. No.
Okay.
TCU had their number. They were the better team. I'm never going to say Michigan's the better team. No.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well,
not going to do it.
I have a bias. I hate Michigan, so I'm going to cheer for TCU. So this is the one time I'm going to vote with my heart, not with the stats.
Fair. But here's what I'll say. You're going to get those moments where the lesser team upsets the better team, right? And guess what? If it was the 12-team playoff, that lesser team would have to do that again and probably get weeded out before you get to the national championship game.
No, absolutely. And that's why we love
fair.
March Madness, because you get those Cinderellas and they get on a hot streak, and it's not 1 or 2 games. Like, they get to the Sweet 16, they get to the Elite 8. That's like, whoa, So you really have to be a good team if you're going to go on a run. And that's why I actually love the 12-team playoff.
Unless you're Gonzaga in 2021, where you get smoked in the national championship game. So.
Because that national championship puts the whole, well, what about the Cinderella story in college football? Well, that was the closest you're going to get to seeing what would happen. Correct. So let's embrace this 12-team playoff to its fullest extent, because the TCUs of the future they might win a game, yes, but they're going to get weeded out, and we're going to get a much better championship game every year going forward, in my opinion.
I think that's very fair.
That was my takeaway.
Yeah. Well, should we get to some people here, get some contributions from some of the people here? I've got a little bit of a stat piece here that I want to run through, but kind of want to get some other people's input here before I jump to that.
Yeah, I'd love to see what everyone's impression was before we get to the stats.
Yeah. All right. You guys pick the first person.
Jimmy texted me. He's having dinner or watching a movie. He's just listening. Casey, Jimmy has been caught. He's putting the kids to bed. Casey said he's just interested in listening. So,
Regisand?
We can go to Matthew, Reg, or Dart's doing it. Wherever you guys want to go.
I just invited Regisand to speak. Regisand 42. Jump on, man. You have
I
valuable
definitely want to
things.
hear people's impression of the Natty and what it means for the 12-team playoff coming up and everything.
I mean, it's been just over a week, so which feels like it's longer than that. So,
Red just thumbs down, so I'm guessing he doesn't want to speak.
Yeah, but when you look at Notre Dame, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, what that national championship showed is, for all the quote unquote haters, Notre Dame was not as bad as people wanted to
dump on.
Exactly. Like, it's just, we were not that far off. Having said that, you can, and I don't want to go too ahead of your script there, Joe, but the difference in Notre Dame in 2012 and then in 2018 and again in 2020 was a very specific position on the field.
Yes.
That now 2012 not so much, because I think there was nothing over the top that would have changed the outcome, in my opinion. I don't think Golson and Reese, that combination, was that awful. And I'm not saying Book is that awful, but I would take the Golson-Reese combination over Ian Book. I really would. So
interesting.
I'd agree with that.
18.
I mean, it depends on like, I'm going to go back to the data, right? Because between 18 and 19, which is really the Ian Book years, right? You could, I guess, do 2020 in there too, but 2019 is by far Notre Dame's best offensive year. And I've argued with people before who are like, "Oh no, it's 2015." It's actually not. It's 2019 as a whole. If you just look at offensive stats, now I still have to break down 2022. I haven't done that yet, but if I go back to just the book years, like things like yards per point or total touchdowns scored, our scoring offense, total offense, right? A lot of these stats are significantly better with respect to 2019 and Ian Book and that squad versus the 2012 season. The one that really jumps off the page, I'll kind of jump on this one. Red zone touchdowns. If you recall, and I've actually been going back and watching some old 2012 games, like while doing the dishes or while falling asleep in bed or whatever. And Notre Dame was atrocious in 2012 in red zone touchdowns. We were ranked 112th in the country and scored a touchdown 48% of the time in the red zone. It's by far the worst. And the best was actually 2019. We were 8th in the country and scored 76% of the time.
And I wonder how much of that has to go along with the evolution of the game from 2012 to 2019.
I mean, we did pass better, right? You have Chase Claypool out there.
Well, I would say that to Mike's point, the evolution of the game with the read option and whatnot, if the offense that Ian Book was running with that, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't 2019 his most rushing touchdowns in one season?
I do have this. Let me find that.
That sounds about right.
But if Golson ran that style of offense versus his mobility and running was more of a scrambling style, there were not many designed runs in the way today's offenses are put together.
Right. The RPO evolution from the West Coast offense within that 10-year span absolutely is the deciding factor.
Well, why were we so excited about Tyler Buckner in the red zone? It's because of those.
He's fast as shit.
He's a run threat.
Exactly.
That's why.
And Golson had mobility, but I don't think he was. You're sitting there going, he's a run threat. It's like, well, this is a terrible example, but like Michael Vick, he was a run threat, but not because they were designing runs for him. He was just that elusive.
Yeah, he could just get out there. All right, here we go. I got the numbers here. So there's a little bit of co-host trivia here. Who had more rushing touchdowns? Ian Book of, pick a year. Say Ian Book 2019 or Everett Golson 2012. Who had more rushing touchdowns?
I would think Book.
Yeah.
No. Book had 4
Really?
rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
Golson had 6. Now, who had more? Golson 2012 or Book 2020?
Oh, Book.
Book had 9.
Okay, then I got my years backwards. Okay.
That's okay. Now, who's of the Kelly era from quarterbacks, who has the most?
Isn't it Kaiser?
Yes. Kaiser with 10.
Yeah.
It actually, I take that back. It might be Wimbush. I don't have Wimbush on here of 2017. I'd have to look that up here. But yeah, on my sheet here, I don't have on this particular tab. I started making it. What's my tagline other than Scotch and spreadsheets? It's #RTDB. So I started creating a run the damn football, stat sheet here. To figure out, okay, who had more. Okay, Wimbush. Total touchdowns, 2017, 14. So it is the most. He had more touchdowns rushing in 2017 than Dexter Williams had in 2018.
Wow.
And also the carries per touchdown, like how many carries it takes for you before you get a touchdown. Wimbush, it was 10 flat. Dexter Williams, 13.2. Jonas Gray in 2011 was 9.5. Every 9.5 times he touches the ball, he's scoring a touchdown. And he finished with 12 in 2011. So go figure there. So everyone gives Josh Adams a ton of credit, and Josh Adams is awesome. But in hashtag, what was it, 33 trucking? Everyone buy a hat. Josh Adams, 22.9 carries per touchdown. Crazy.
Well, I don't want to jump ahead, but there's a gentleman who rushed for 11 touchdowns and 363 yards last year, and he'll now be quarterbacking the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Mm-hmm.
Which I didn't ever expand this, and it's impressive. I didn't realize I knew he had some mobility, but Mr. Hartman can cross the goal line with the football in his hands too, pretty much.
Yeah, he doesn't suck. I will say that. Now my stat sheet says he only had one rushing touchdown. What is this?
No, that was last year. The year before, 2021.
Oh, excuse me. Okay.
Yeah, just for his career. I was looking back.
Okay. I just looked at this past year. Okay. All right.
Less attempts and less yards this year. Which again, that might, like we're talking about the difference in initially how we thought of Golson and Book, the difference in offensive styles. But I think they were running the slow mesh last year or the year before last too.
I hope we don't run the mesh. I'm not a fan of that style of offense. It's so annoying.
I don't think we will. But
something
I saw was with the slow mesh, which we saw against Stanford, and we've watched a few of the Wake Forest games, and we probably all watched the Gasparilla Bowl because of Sam Hartman. It takes so long, the emphasis on the slow. By the time he pulls the ball, if he's pulling it, there's defenders in space. Sam Hartman, now he's trying to make reads while he's doing that slow mesh crap, but ultimately when he pulls it, he's got to make a quick decision and the right decision. So if he's able to do that in that system with a much lesser offensive line and lesser running game, there's no reason he can't succeed doing what Tommy Rees wants to do. And we're going to find out how good he is this year too. But running the offense that we have seen, there's no reason he can't excel if he excelled within that ridiculous offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Wake had 17 touchdowns rushing, and Notre Dame had 25. So
yeah, and I heard on a national podcast they were saying that they literally said Wake Forest by far has superior wide receivers to Notre Dame, and I feel like we're glossing because their emphasis was, look, Michael Mayer was their best receiver, and he's a tight end, so the receivers must be terrible. I'm like, I feel like you're missing a factor in why those numbers were the way they were. The quarterback had a lot to do with that. I feel like we're glossing over that. I don't think our receivers were that horrible.
Yeah. Well, we invited Johnny W. Boxing on, and I see Nick there is on mute. Johnny, are you there with us, sir?
Well, being technically challenged, I hope you can hear me. How are you, bud?
We're doing well. Welcome to the Fighting 5-Foot Irish Nothing Faithful show.
I love it. How are you guys?
We're good. We're discussing the Sam Hartman news, and then we can even talk about the national championship game and how it makes Notre Dame's beat down by Alabama not as terrible.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed that speech before the game I sent you. Was that not amazing or what?
That was exciting. I was what I'm curious about this, and I don't follow Georgia other than, catching an occasional game. I'm curious whether or not that is how Kirby Smart talks to his players normally, or if that was like if I was the coach, I probably wouldn't. Well, okay, I can't say that, but it probably wouldn't be my style to use said language. But sometimes there's a time and a place to use said language when it's warranted, and if you really need to get the attention of your guys, motivate them and get in their face or whatever and go a little Bobby Knight, but not quite as forceful. I would be curious on where he is on that scale.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, I wasn't profoundly excited about the language, but as I mentioned to you when we were texting back and forth, it's I wanted to run through a wall. I mean, it was pretty motivating. The language part, I guess, like you said, time and place. But I just want to jump in real quick. I didn't know how to work this mic stuff. You know me, I can barely do Excel, so I just wanted to say hello.
No problem. Well, we're happy you joined us. Do you what do you think of the Sam Hartman news?
I'm just a big TB12 fan. I really like Buckner, and I think that he has a lot of upside. And I feel bad. That's the utopiatic side of me. What that being said is Hartman is no slouch and gives us a great opportunity. But I guess the optimist in me is just rooting for Buckner, and I think he has so much to give. But Hartman seems to be really, really good plug-and-play type of player, if that makes sense.
I think so too, and my thought is, I mean, and I love Buckner. Obviously, I wasn't quite fanning palm leaves at him, but definitely was playing epic music prior to the Ohio State game, and just because I think he brings a lot of electricity, and I asked 5'0" Pod if he thought he was Maverick, and I think he's a little on the fence on that one, but we'll see. What I will say is, I'd rather have a situation where you have more talent and more options in the quarterback room rather than just like, you're going down the play sheet and you're looking at your bench, like it's some cartoon, and you go to that scrawny, skinny, cartoon character at the end of the bench next to the water cooler, if you guys get my drift. That is not Notre Dame right now. You have two very viable quarterbacks, and that is the best problem to have.
Yeah, I think you make a valid point. And bottom line is whichever guy is going to give us the best opportunity to win obviously makes sense. But not to beat a dead horse, just a big TB12 fan and just think the world of that kid and what he's gone through and how he played in the bowl game. And, it's not set in stone that Hartman beats him out. I mean, that's a whole nother bag of questions. So we'll have to see what happens in the spring and summer. I
agree. It's not set in stone yet. I think some people, if you just look at numbers and data and stuff, Sam Hartman does jump off the page, but again, you have a limited sample size with Buckner. So I think there's a known quantity of what you will get with Hartman. But we also, everyone talks about the potential that is Buckner, and, but at some point you have to put the rose-colored glasses of potential down to figure out, okay, what do we have and what actually is going to help us win and put points on the scoreboard.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to put, I think I figured out how to turn the mic off so I can listen. Anyone on the show that I'm not following, please let me know. I always follow back. So, again, brother, thanks for having me on, and I'll keep listening.
Absolutely. At Johnny W. Boxing, if anyone's got some boxing you want to discuss, this is the man to talk to. On the Twitter, loyal friend of the show. Thank you, sir, for your contributions tonight. I guess it's fairly daylight out there on the West Coast. Nick, I see you there. You there, Nick Shipkowski.
What's happening, gentlemen?
Hello, welcome to the Fighting
What's up,
5 Foot Irish Nothing Faithful show.
Yeah, I love the blend of the words. That got me going. And anytime I see 5 foot, I had to jump in and give him hell about something. But he celebrated his Giants, so it's a good weekend for him.
All right, let's new show status. All right, give 5 Foot Nothing Pod hell.
Well, real quick before you give me hell, I will be flying into Newark Sunday, ideally decked out in Giants gear. And then I'll be going to my new company's training, which I've learned there's a couple Eagles fans in the mix, so that should be fun.
That's always good. And it's I know that Newark gets its bad rap, but at least it's not Philadelphia.
It's not. No. But the
I
training
assume Nick is from the Garden State as well.
No, I'm actually from Chicago. I'm not a huge Philadelphia person either, so
okay.
I can fall in line with 5 foot on that one for sure. No, I was enjoying the Hartman conversation. I think that this
it's clearly a good move for Notre Dame and a good fit. Someone who's and Wake Forest isn't a shitty school. It's not Yale, but it's not bad.
That's what I want to hear from you, Nick. You're the national guy, so I don't think I've actually at length heard or read your thoughts on the Hartman thing. So go.
I mean, I think you look at the way this offense sets up right now, and you guys touched on a little bit receiver-wise. I think there's room to grow here, and I think that expectations for how many young guys in the receiver room there are going to be next year maybe needs to chill a little bit. But you put Hartman into this offense, And tell me that this isn't the best Notre Dame offense going into a year since what? The Brady Quinn years, the end of the Brady Quinn years with Charlie Weiss.
Yeah, maybe 2006.
You have a proven commodity. You have a proven commodity at quarterback. You have you might not have the best running back in the nation, but you have as talented and as deep a backfield as any team in the country right now.
Yes.
And you have what should be one of the top 3, top 4 offensive lines at worst going into next year. I have questions on the defensive side of the ball. I got some worries. It starts up front. Secondary depth, I have questions with. The development at linebacker, the position's been recruited well, but there's, I guess, concerns of how quickly that can kind of come up to speed. But offensively, like, you're looking at this right now, it's going to be a disappointment if this team's not averaging 35, 36 points a game.
Nick, where are you at on the comments that our wide receiver room is not very good and Sam Hartman is going to have nobody to throw the football to?
Well, I don't think it was very good last year. I don't think that's unfair to say.
But is that just the receivers who are dropping passes? Like if I go and unless someone has this, by all means, please educate me. But it's very difficult to look at completion percentage or receiving yards or whatever, and just like there's no stat for, well, this guy dropped a pass or this guy ran a shitty route or is it, the quarterback didn't give him the ball or threw it? You know what I mean? Like,
it's hard for me to put all the blame like on the receivers because you were dealing with a guy for 10 and a half games last year that he couldn't push the ball down the field. And that's nothing against Drew Pine. It just physically he wasn't able to do that. Like that's.
Well, I don't even know if it's a physicality thing. I think it's more of a comfort level / his ability to see guys that are open, right?
Certainly, but I mean, if you're basing it off of like height, I mean, Hartman's only a half inch, 3/4 of an inch taller, so it's not like you're getting the 6'5" giant walking.
Oh,
in
that
all
3/4 matters. Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm told.
What?
When you look at it though, like I think that the receiver room, it's on the verge of becoming something pretty special. I don't know if it's there yet because even the guys that you have, whether it's optimism or excitement for, you still got questions with. Like Lorenzo Styles, where did the hand issues come from this year? The drops were very concerning and they didn't go away as the year went on. Deion Colsey, you saw him develop a little bit as the year went on and get called upon more. But I don't think anybody really thought going into this that at the end of the year that the receiver that you're going to kind of have as the most known commodity is being Jaden Thomas. Like that's not
Correct.
A knock on Jaden Thomas, but it's kind of a knock.
Yeah, it's kind of more of a surprise, right?
The room of just saying where everything else is.
Yeah, I mean, I was personally, I thought that we'd see more out of Lorenzo Styles. I mean, true or false? Lorenzo Styles had 3 receiving touchdowns.
Did he have that many even? Like it was
false. He had 1.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Mayer had 9. After that, from our receivers, Jaden Thomas and Lindsey both had 3.
Yeah. And Lindsey was a guy that you didn't have a quarterback that in some cases could get him the ball and push the ball down the field like that. Yep. I look at this and I look at the Hartman thing and I love the competition that it brings to the room, that you don't just go into it. We've talked about the Buckner injury. I mean, we being Notre Dame fans all across the country have talked about the Buckner injury and just the unavailability with him for multiple years now. And it's been bad luck, but the biggest predictor of injuries is previous injuries. And so you do have that going into your mind, kind of going in with him. I'm rooting for the kid too. I hope that he turns out to be everything he was hyped to be when he was that fringe 5-star recruit that signed with Notre Dame. But I think Notre Dame's crazy if they don't go into this year with, especially if there's a player with the pedigree of Hartman. I mean, you haven't had this. You haven't had a guy that can push the ball downfield at quarterback for Notre Dame with any consistency since Deshaun Kaiser. And even Kaiser was pretty. Even when he left, I think that he was pretty green. Still.
Yeah, he still is showing regression in 2016. Grant, there's a lot of problems with 2016, but yeah,
like he could have used another year to develop. Like and then you put him on that 2017. That's another question for another day. How good that team.
Well,
could have been.
and
They
maybe
had a
this
real
is
quarterback,
a whole
but-
other discussion of, you know, either from BK not developing guys, you know, we've criticized that, to is it a Reese as quarterback coach thing? You know, it's like clearly didn't do it with Wimbush. You know, Book in some areas showed regression, in certain areas not so much. Who knows? You know, we're asking Reese to coach up Pine, you know, and that is kind of what it is. You know, like, is there a whole lot of development that Coach Reese can do with Sam Hartman? Right?
Well, I think that the interesting thing is, I don't know about development, but you look at the way that Wake Forest runs their offense, and so much of it is that short, mesh everything, kind of screen each other open or pick each other open, which, coming from a bunch of Notre Dame fans, is funny when you consider they play in the ACC and they get to do that with ACC officials. But I'm curious to see how Hartman kind of adjusts to this offense, because he definitely has the ability to push the ball down the field. I know you guys talked about it a little bit earlier on. He can move around a little bit better, I think, than he gets credit for as well, which I just look at this, and assuming health, which you do that with Notre Dame quarterbacks in recent years, and it's not always going to get you to where you're looking to go. But I look at this, and it's going to make everything around him so much better. You're going to make the receivers better by having a guy that can be a threat to push the ball downfield. That's going to open up the running game even that much more. And you're talking about a running game that's going to be very deep and just about as talented as any in the country. You're working with an offensive line that's going to be one of the best in the country. You're working with a group of tight ends that, okay, you lose Mayer, and Mayer is a freak of freaks at that position, but you're still talented at that position. I mean, I just think that this is one of those that I wish I felt better about the defense going into next year, because I really, truly do think this is going to be one of the very best Notre Dame offenses we've seen in a good 15 years, since the early days of Charlie Weiss.
Well, and if you go back to any of these big games, you know, anything from, you know, 2012, we were talking about 2012, and we'll circle around back to the comparison of Notre Dame 2012 versus Alabama versus Georgia and TCU, because there's a comparison piece. I want to do that helps tuck me into bed and not be afraid of the boogeyman in the closet when I think of that game. It's more like cowering in the corner like a scared kid. But anyway, you know, going back and looking at, you know, our offense, you know, it let us down against Clemson in 2018, you know, let us down in 2012. You could even argue that it was slow to start versus USC this year. Now, fortunately, that was actually Pine's best game, the USC game, but it took a couple of series for them to start to get the rhythm, and then USC could not stop our offense. But what I will say here, and one thing that I think gives us, you know, this is something that cannot be ignored, and I'll revisit this stat next week as far as passing touchdowns being extremely important. And for 2022, the last 10 years, passing touchdowns was the second most important stat behind total touchdowns. Sam Hartman was 5th in the country in passing touchdowns. That is higher than Bryce Young at Alabama, higher than Michael Penix at Washington, who's a huge return for them, Bo Nix at Oregon, and more than the two-time national champion now Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
So that's a key piece there, and then I'll give it back to you. But that cannot be ignored. That is a resume of someone who is putting the ball out there and threw for 3,700 yards.
Well,
Huge.
And I think that's obviously huge. And I think the big thing to factor into this is that as good as Hartman was at Wake Forest, some of that was scheme in order for him to be called upon to throw as much as that. He's not going to have had a running game like he's going to have this year. He didn't have an offensive line to play behind like he's going to have this year. He didn't have. Now I just at least went on about how it's a lot of potential, but not a lot of proven commodities at receiver. but he didn't have receivers that were rated the same way as Notre Dame's
Correct.
receivers that he's going to have at this coming in. Like, you take those numbers and you take them back a little bit because Notre Dame's going to be able to rely on the run a heck of a lot better than Wake Forest was. Like, you watch that Wake Forest offense, and it's almost like watching a knuckleball pitcher in a way when they did run the ball, because it's, if you remember how Le'Veon Bell used to run for the Steelers, and it'd be like this delay to hit holes, and it was almost foreign to kind of see. It's like every running back was that way, and it was like watching an off-speed knuckleball pitch come in from just something completely different, and it's just it spoke to how they didn't prioritize a run game. He is going to have everything around him that you can really see. Like, it makes all the sense in the world. If you're
there
Sam
is
Hartman
something that he has that will be working against him. He will no longer be wearing Nike. He'll be wearing Under Armour.
It's only a matter of time.
I'm just saying, man, like, look, it seems like everyone who wins the title is wearing Nike shit, right? And for God's sakes, can we just get the ass sweat pants? Like, Under Armour, do better. Seriously, do better. They look terrible. Go back to Champion or Adidas.
Pants. I like those pants.
But
I might be
they
the only
showed
one.
sweat. Like, why can they not show sweat? I know this is like childish, but like, seriously, like no one else shows that. Like, is it the gold color? Like, do we need to go to a different shade of gold? Like,
we need to go
like
back.
the Holtz era gold.
Yeah,
something
that's gold.
shiny that doesn't look like, mustard that you put on your Philly cheesesteak. Do you put mustard on a cheesesteak? Who knows? I don't know.
Taco dog, I bet.
It's like really bad Cheese Whiz. I don't know.
Well, the one thing I want to say, Nick, your concerns about the defense, I get it, understood. However, my thought is much like when people were trying to say the offensive line is going to struggle. It's kind of like, until I see it, I won't believe it. And in recent years, dating all the way back to Diaco, our defenses have been pretty solid.
Hey, you're right. They have been.
So I feel like until they're not, I'm gonna assume they're gonna come out and get shit done. Now, I do find the red zone efficiency very awkward last year because every other statistical
awkward. Is that a kind way of putting bad?
It was
red zone defense or red zone offense?
No, defense.
Defense.
No, we were ranked 131st out of 131 in red zone efficiency defensively. However,
you got inside the 20, you were putting up 7.
But every other stat was like top 20. It was the weirdest thing.
Well, how do national champions rank in said stat?
How?
No, I'm. That's a genuine question. I genuinely don't.
Yeah,
know.
I
don't know either. We're gonna write that down. That'll be a homework assignment for me for next week.
Yeah, Georgia had one of the best defenses in the country this past year, so I'd assume they ranked really well in that without looking.
Red zone defense.
But that was the thing with Notre Dame didn't force turnovers the first half of the year. How long did we go? A month into the season, 5 games into the season before they finally forced a turnover?
Yeah.
Like, it was just, that was not, and I know that those are hard to predict. Like, no matter how great your pass rush is, no matter how great some things are, turnovers are hard to predict, but that was not happening.
Rather than just focus on the one side of the thing, which, don't get me wrong, Nick's 100% right here about your defense does need to force some turnovers. But yeah, I mean, I like looking at turnover margin as a whole, because then it's like your offense versus your defense, and it's kind of like competing versus yourself. Rather than just hoping for fortuitous stupidity by your opponent. This is not Michigan of 2012 with Denard Robinson, throwing 4 picks, right? Well, Nick, great contribution tonight. I really appreciate you jumping on the Coast Show here. We'll have to have you back at any time. Anyone's welcome back.
Nick, go ahead and you write for Fighting Irish Wire and
yeah, go ahead. Plug, please.
Oh, yeah.
Do it.
FightingIrishWire.com. You can find all the work there. I appreciate that very much.
Fighting Irish Wire.
Just did some stuff on a couple of things recruiting wise. Justin Scott, the big 5-star defensive lineman from my neck of the woods that Tom Loy had crystal ball to Notre Dame yesterday goes ahead and gets the offer from Georgia today. And if you're a defensive lineman, specifically a defensive tackle, that's the offer. If you're Notre Dame, you got to be scared to death about. Wrote a little bit about that today, so you can check that out. I appreciate the plug, guys.
Hey, if you're supporting Notre Dame and you're doing other stuff, by all means, you're welcome here anytime.
Awesome. Well, I will go back to cleaning up the kitchen and be checking you guys out.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, guys.
Is there?
All right, moving along. 5 Foot Nothing Pod. Who do you want next?
Well, I know Adam usually has some things to say, but
Adam always has something. Regisan's just listening. He's thumbs down, or he hates us, and he's just here to heckle us. Adam Dowling.
Oh.
Invite to speak. Adam _Dowling 1. Adam. Maybe he's just listening. That's fine too.
Okay. All right.
Red Snap, are you back on?
I am back on.
There you
that
go.
was really weird.
That sucks. You probably had really awesome, valuable contributions.
I totally wanted to talk.
I know. I was like, man,
I
Red
was sitting
Snapper's
there talking,
really
and
quiet.
I'm like, wait a sec. My stuff's not even moving. Like, oh, crap. They're not even hearing me.
I know. That's okay. Well, and full disclosure here, I actually didn't hit record right when we started, so I'll have to go back and do some fancy editing in the post-production here. So anyway, Red Snapper, what's your take on any of that, just to recap, and then we'll move on?
Well, as far as the red zone defense, just right at the end, I wanted to chime in. A lot of that is going to be the evolution of the defense, the defensive coordinator, the coaching staff as a whole, and the maturation of a very young secondary that we saw through the season this year. And I think the red zone is obviously going to be one of the more difficult, because the field shortens. And we saw first half of the season how many blitzes just get burned. So disguising our coverages and everything else that just speaks inexperience and putting together a brand new system with a new coach. Like, absolutely, I think it's just an attrition factor. And you're going to have the same coaching staff. You're going to have guys coming back, with a season under their belt, and Morrison Island, absolutely love it. I want to see more of that from other people. And I see us having a great secondary. You look at the recruits coming in. You look at the linebacker crew, especially transfer from Ohio State. Like, there's going to be a lot that helps the defense. Like we were talking about the offense with Hartman. I think the defense is going to have a lot. We were excited about, I can't think of his name right now, coming from Northwestern. But we're going to have so much more experience
Brandon
coming
Joseph.
in it. Yes, Brandon Joseph, thank you. Having just that attrition factor on the defensive side as well as the offensive side with the experience of the coaching staff now with a full season under their belt.
Yeah. I'm really, and you mentioned this, Javonte Jean-Baptiste from Ohio State. How often does that happen? Someone leaves Columbus and the shoe and comes to Notre Dame, man, that's crazy. Crazy.
And
talk.
I'm gonna give all the credit to I am horrible with names today. I am really sorry. Foskey.
Yeah.
I think he saw Foskey put up the stats, and that absolutely, with the defense that Notre Dame is running, that maximized him, and the fact that he may, if he wants to, have the opportunity to play on special teams and be that X factor like Foskey was on
Make a name
blocks.
for yourself. Yeah.
I mean, that, if anything, is going to raise your draft stock. And I know you hate talking NFL and draft and everything else, but that's where college players are looking.
I don't hate it. I've never said I hated the NFL. that is false.
You're all about Notre Dame. I know.
Well, I just don't do fantasy.
does...
Like I spend way too much time doing, the Dos Leprechauns, Bowl Mania pick'em. I got 4th place, by the way, and woot, I got some money from that. So when I talk about like spreadsheets and shit, like, yeah, it actually matters. And actually, if I had implemented the system I ultimately settled on at the beginning, I would have won at least 2 more games. So I'm just saying, and the math predicted that USC would lose to Tulsa, and so hence the confidence points and why I got that. It wasn't just because I hated SC. No, I mean I hate SC, but the math said go with Tulsa, so I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do what the math says. So here it is.
No,
4th place.
And overall, and this is something I wanted to actually ask Nick, was his impression of Hartman and compare and contrast it to Jack Cohn.
Ooh. Jack Cohn.
Well, no knock on Jack Cohn, but far superior talent in Hartman.
Definitely more productivity
like
from an output standpoint.
This was definitely meant to be here's a ball on the tee and I'm handing you the bat. So Nick, go ahead.
Would you rather?
Yeah, that's no disrespect to Jack Cohn. Could put the ball down the field. Wasn't nearly, I don't think, as accurate as Hartman is there. I know a lot of it in playing behind the offensive line that he did. Hartman's not going to have that same kind of problem that Cohn did. That line wasn't as developed in 2021 with Cohn as it's going to be this coming year in 2023. Hartman's going to have that in his favor as well. But also on top of it, Hartman's not a statue. Like Cohn was a statue back there.
Yes,
so that only adds things as well. Like, I'm not trying to make this a rip on Jack Cohn fest, but it's pretty comparable to a night and day difference between the two quarterbacks.
I came to appreciate Jack Cohn, last season.
Yeah.
Just from a sense of like, and Buckner was, significantly healthier overall as a season, versus, where he was this year, obviously with the injury and the Marshall game. But, I did a show, and this is going back if anyone's really bored in the off season, I what was the title? It was something about like there was an argument that I put forward that there was a place for Cohn and Buckner on the offense simultaneously. And it was a little bit of a comparison to the Reese and Golson bit from 2012, but not exactly. Because we were a far better passing team in last year than we were in 2012, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with Cohn and his ability to just be very calm and collect in the pocket. Although Nick uses the best modifier I've ever heard, and I've used this as well. Cohn was a statue back there. But he also had ice in his veins, and he wasn't, freaking out in the backfield, like Dane Christ always was.
Yeah, that is true. Cohn brought a level of confidence. He was comfortable. He didn't panic. But again, it still falls under the same umbrella of limited quarterback. Regardless of what the limitations were, there were some limitations.
Oh, yeah.
And Sam Hartman is bringing the lack of that. I can't think outside of his height. I don't know what really you can point to. Go, well, he's limited there, because I mentioned he had 380 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns in 2021. We obviously know what his passing statistics are, and again, I feel like he accomplished this in a ridiculous offense. So give him our offensive line, our running game, our higher rated wide receivers, and I just feel like the sky's the limit. To Nick's point, the defense is a concern, but I don't think it's such a concern that it's going to look like the damn Charlie Weiss teams were like, did you know that we had to recruit the defensive side too? Like, I'll never get ridiculous. Like, we could score 40, but great, we're giving up 41. What the hell does it matter?
Yeah. Well, you look at our recruits here. Our top 2 enrollees. From Drake Bowen and Christian Gray. They're both. They're both on the defensive side of the ball, and then the next 2 guys are receivers. And this is per 24/7 Sports, and then you got Minchie coming in, right? Then if we scroll down to our signed letters of intent, right? We got some offensive guys, Jeremiah Love's down there, but then, Jean-Baptiste from Ohio State, man. I mean, and then Harper, from Oklahoma State, so, I mean, we're getting the transfers in where we need them, and filling some gaps. We got one guy who wants to go be a Sun Devil, peace be with him. Maybe he's just sick of the cold and he's ready for some warmer weather or something. So, well, we got Justin Cates here on mute down in Arizona. Maybe he has a comment about, what's going on down in Sun Devil land there in the Tempe area. Justin Cates, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. How's Etsy going? I see you got 5 stars on Etsy.
Etsy's crap.
Everybody.
We're probably going to shut the store down, man. And that's not your fault,
Yeah.
Maybe if I had given you more responsibility, we would have done better. But welcome to the Fighting 5 Foot Irish Nothin Faithful show. We got 5 Foot Nothin Pod as my co-host, and of course Red Snapper here. So dual show.
Fellas, so what do you want to know about ASU?
Well, our quarterback just transferred there, right? So
yeah, well, but I don't think he's going to win the job. So
would that surprise you though?
No. To be honest, I don't think I mean, you had a few sort of like fringe fans being like, he was the starting quarterback at Notre Dame and he's coming here. But most intelligent fans are like, this dude's super, athletically not as gifted, doesn't have all the tools, has a weak arm, and is 5'11". But we think he's pretty smart,
You're being generous with the 5'11", but
yeah.
but
I
yeah,
do not think he's 5'11".
Well, okay. I saw a picture of him next to Kenny Minchie. One of two things is true: Drew Pine is 5'9", or Kenny Minchie's actually 6'6". One of those two things is true.
Mitchie's got the big afro hair, right? Like
Drew Pine's eyes were at Kenny Minchie's like chin, like one of those. That's what I'm saying. Like it has nothing to do with his hair, but no, I was surprised Pine went to Arizona State only because I like the guy. He's your quintessential, fighter, tough guy. Like, I'm gonna battle. Obviously, if you transfer, maybe not the best battler, but he was like a good guy.
He does a sick swag, man. That swagger walk that he does,
I want to see him succeed.
That gif will live in infamy. That between the swagger walk of Pine and the Brian Van Gorder fist pump,
he'll do well. That swag will play well on Mill Avenue, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, is that
he
maybe
could
that's
be a winner in life and not even have to play.
And just walk down Tempe doing
I guess
that.
I felt like he was perfectly suited to go to a higher level G5 school and get a real opportunity to play. And I just don't, at the Power 5 level, regardless of the school, I just didn't see that as a clear path to success for Drew Pine. So maybe Justin can speak more to that if he gets the Sun Devil Gazette and he knows all about it. I don't know.
No, I actually don't. I mean, I keep up a little bit, but I don't follow ASU as close as I would Notre Dame. And I walked on at ASU, so.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see what happens with Drew Pine. I wanted to see him succeed. It just was never going to happen at Notre Dame, not with our expectations. And I mean, he had to have seen his own film, right?
Of course,
right? Like, that's part of football. I played. You watch your own film. There's no way you're sitting there going, "Well, damn, that was really good. I excelled at that play."
Yeah. I got some questions here. I want to do there's a little bit of stat piece here on Hartman here. I did a comparison of him to Drew Pine, and anyone can jump on. If you're in the wing here just listening, we got tons of people. Kevin Davis, Adam Dowling, Redisan, you're giving me a thumbs down because I know you don't want to speak. Hunter Heisley, Michael. I got a bunch of people, so if anyone wants to jump on, by all means. And this is an open forum. There's a bunch of new people here, or maybe Nick's helping boost our our audience here. But we like hearing everybody here speak. So don't be shy. This is actually a friendly place. I know we sound intimidating at times, but not. It's really not. Okay, true or false? Who had a higher complete? Let me do this. This is like The Price is Right. You match the quarterback to the number. Completion percentage. 64.6% versus 63.1%. Who is Drew Pine and who is Sam Hartman?
Okay, I believe. Well, I'll let someone else go. I think I know the answer.
Well, we're not going to wait all day,
Cool.
Just go 5-0 pod.
I believe Hartman has the lower completion percentage.
That is correct.
I think I'm like, yeah. And
That
here's
is
the
correct.
thing. The reason I was like 99.9% confident in that is I saw somebody put that, and my rebuttal is, but like I'll go find it, because my rebuttal was, that's great, except that Drew Pine had 5 games, damn near half the season, where he was less than 53% completion percentage. He floated his stats with 3 effing games where he was 80-something%.
Correct.
And his best game we lost.
Yeah.
So, but damn it, where's the Hartman stats?
Okay, well, here, let me jump to the other thing, because I think this is the most compelling and like mind-boggling piece. Now, obviously, Caleb Williams, we don't like him, but he did win the Heisman. Voted by whatever, but who else are you going to give it to? I guess I don't know. Stetson Bennett. So what I'd like doing every year is comparing the Notre Dame quarterback, the Heisman Trophy winner, and the national champion. Okay. Of the following, who threw the most passing touchdowns? Caleb Williams, Hartman, or Stetson Bennett?
I think it's Hartman. 38.
Yes, 38. Caleb Williams at 37.
Yeah.
Now, yards is not close, right? But here's the thing. Attempts per touchdown. Who was worst in this group of 4, Stetson Bennett, Drew Pine, Sam Hartman, or Caleb Williams? Who had the worst attempts per touchdown ratio? So it took you more passing attempts, to throw a touchdown pass. Who was the worst? So, i.e. the highest number.
I want to say Williams.
No,
but
Stetson Bennett. 16.8.
Really? Okay. I knew it wasn't Pine because he didn't.
Not Pine.
I know it wasn't. He didn't throw the ball enough.
It's not even close, actually.
Yeah.
Here's the crazy piece. So I'll slip. This is the answer here. The best was Hartman of those 4. Yeah, I didn't do the whole country, right? I just looked at notable people.
Yeah.
Hartman had an attempt to touchdown ratio of 11.26. Who's number 2 on this list? So it's not Bennett. Is it Pine or Caleb Williams?
I think it's Pine.
It is Pine. Pine had a better attempt to touchdown ratio than your Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams. Well, he's not my Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah.
Fuck USC. Fucking Trojans. Okay. But yeah, 11.5 versus 12.1 for Caleb Williams.
Yeah. And see, to me, those are relevant stats. And you can make stats say whatever you want them to say. But going back to the completion percentage, that one always got me. Like, I'm looking at Hartman now. What do you have? 2 games below 60% completion percentage? Mm-hmm. Sure, he didn't have a single game above 69. But to me, that says he's consistent. I'll take 63, 64 versus how you got there. Well, I had 3 games of 84 or better, and I had 5 below 50.
Yep.
Oh, great! Like I don't want the 47% completion game. Like,
well, and I have to be honest here about Caleb Williams. You know, he's not all trash and media bias and him, doing nail polish on his fingers or whatever. Okay, no. There is something that does jump off the page, which is fantastic. Okay, and it is his touchdown to interception ratio. Okay, and if anyone recalls or has listened to my show for a while, USC was superior in in turnover margin as a team. His touchdown to interception ratio was really good. It was 9.3. Of those 4 men that I just mentioned, Williams, Hartman, Pine, and Bennett, Hartman was the worst, 3.2. Okay, so that is the only thing that really, like, quote unquote concerns me with him. It's worse than Jack Cohn, who is 3.6. One of the best was actually Jalen Hurts from Alabama in 2017. Joe Burrow. He was pretty good. You may have heard of him. His was 10. But yeah, Caleb Williams 9.3. So I don't want to give him too much credit more than he deserves, but it's more of a function of that is impressive, for how many touchdowns versus how many interceptions you get. So,
yeah, and I think our offense can help with that. I just think the way it's designed, the protection he's going to get. Again, I didn't watch all of Wake Forest. Who was watching all of Wake Forest? I just a lot of his interceptions were due to having to make those quick decisions because of the lack of other supporting cast members, and it led to a mistake. But at the same time, you also throw in 38 touchdowns. Maybe you live with the 12 picks. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you there. All right. Should we talk about this national championship game, or maybe we should open it up to some of these other guys first before we do that?
We didn't get Nick. I don't think we got Nick's take on that, if he's still listening and able to speak. With the national championship just on its own, but then in relation to Notre Dame, Alabama 2012, which is what people seem to always point to as the biggest ass whooping in national championship history.
Crickets.
He's still doing it.
I think he's just listening here, or maybe Twitter's doing that weird thing. So who knows? All right. Well, let's see here. Let's see if we can bring some people on. Adam Dowling's here, Kevin Davis, and if you guys want to speak, we'll just bring everybody on. If anyone wants to speak, by all means, jump on. If you have anything to say, we'll pay attention, and just jump on. Kevin Davis, Jimmy, Pablo, anyone, jump on. Adam Dowling, I know you're never shy to speak. Come on, what's the deal? Regis Sam will leave you be. All right. No one else is going to jump on? It's just going to have to listen to me. All right. We had a ton of people while Nick was talking, but then I started talking about stats and numbers, and then all of a sudden people just started falling asleep and drifting away and went back to watching TikTok or something. All right. One thing I wanted to talk about here is the national championship game. And this was not a pre-planned whatever, like me being funny. It was... As the TCU Georgia game was just beginning, for some weird reason, my brain always goes back to the national championship game on January 7th, 2013, which was not a kind day, and I distinctly remember that day very well, and which sucks. But anyway, the point is, I made a tweet out there, so check me out at faithful_Irish, and I put a tweet out that said, I suddenly feel like rewatching the Notre Dame Alabama game. while the TCU and Georgia game was just beginning. Like kickoff, it just happened, and so my brain just was like, "What? What's this?" Little did I know that we were about to watch, murder on the TV. So it's terrible out there in SoFi Stadium. So, which then led me to the conclusion of wanting to compare Notre Dame versus Alabama and TCU versus Georgia most recently. And yes, I fully admit that this is a little bit of consolation of just like, whew, okay, all right, we are not the worst team to ever get our ass kicked in a national champion. I mean, and that is what happened in that game. Don't get me wrong, right? But hey, embrace the suck. We got exposed in that game, and it was terrible. Although I will say this, man, when you compare it to this TCU Georgia game, I feel a little better. Although that's not a very nice thing, feeling better at someone else's misery. Like, it's still bad what happened to Notre Dame. Don't get me wrong. But I can at least now point to be like, well, look over here at Exhibit A,
Yep.
So, I don't know. Those are my feelings about it. We got some numbers to back that up, but I see that Adam and Kevin are there. Kevin Davis.
Hello.
Welcome to the Fighting 5-Foot Irish Nothin Faithful show.
Awesome. Nice to be with you guys.
Welcome, sir.
That TCU Georgia game. What frustrated me was that everybody was like, TCU's going to upset Georgia. They're going to upset Georgia. I'm like, bull crap. They're not.
No, I didn't think so either.
TCU has never faced, and the same thing if you go back to when Notre Dame played Alabama, TCU had never faced a front six like Georgia's front six on either side of the ball. Like they didn't face that all year. I don't think Michigan would have beat Georgia. I think nobody would have beat them. Their front six was just dominant. And if you go back and think about when we play Alabama, we got beat by the front six. It's like it shows us the importance of. I know you guys always hear me talk about linebackers and all that, but there's something about a front six that makes teams dominant. And what we saw was Georgia's front six on both sides of the ball, the front five running back, quarterback option, front seven on offense, just dominate the game from start to finish. And then you run a 3-3-5 defense against them. It's just I hate that defensive front anyway, but it just wasn't going to work. And as soon as they scored the first touchdown, I said, this game's over.
Yeah.
It was too easy.
Yeah, I put a tweet out there that so I believe TCU took the ball first, and then I don't know if it was 3 or out. It doesn't matter. One thing I put on here is that it took TCU to score on their third possession, whereas it took Notre Dame didn't score their first touchdown until 4 minutes and 8 seconds left in the third quarter. Notre Dame was down 35-0. At that point. So point for TCU in as far as when did you score first, but that's the thing. TCU, and even the doc said that to me tonight. She's just like, well, at least TCU scored early in the game, in the first quarter, and it was compelling. It was 10-7 at the time, and it was like, okay, we may be in for a little bit of a fist fight here, we never know. And then they just get shellacked after that. But one thing I wanted to say, and I'll throw it back to you, and I may have the numbers slightly screwed up, but if memory serves me well, Alabama on their first possession scored in 3 minutes, 58 seconds or something against Notre Dame in their first possession. On Georgia's first possession, it was almost the exact same time. Within 3 seconds of time of possession, marching down the field, putting points on the board for your first touchdown and be up 7-0.
It's crazy.
It was crazy stupid. They did it and they did it so fast. I'm like, I had the game and I pause it on the DVR and I go to open my phone and I go find the box score of Notre Dame versus Alabama. Go do this. Look at the possession time of Alabama, their first possession, and Georgia's first possession. It's within 5 seconds, 3 seconds of each other. It's stupid similar. And it's like, whoa, this is weird. We're having like a deja vu moment. And at that point, I was like, I don't know. And I thought Georgia was going to win anyway. But, yeah.
Yeah, my only defense, and when people compare it to Notre Dame game, I just say, did you guys watch the Manti Te'o documentary?
I did.
Like, I just, like, there was a lot going on behind the scenes for us for that game. So, I'm like, I try to use that as a, we got whooped just as bad, but we had a lot going on at the time.
Correct.
There was a lot going on for Notre Dame.
When I was that a-hole on Twitter saying, all right, who at TCU got catfished before the game?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's not nice. I fully embrace that. That is kind of shitty to say, but it's like, well, I mean, my hope is this with Teo. He's clearly moved on. He's married. He's got a kid, right? His pro career. He was clearly never the same from a linebacker, killer instinct standpoint after that, right? And who would be, right? But like, it's my point. It's like, well, humor is the spice of life, and it's like, I get made fun of for stuff, red snapper, don't jump on right now and talk right now. But if your microphone's broken, maybe we'll just leave it broken. But yeah, I tweeted that, so it's not very nice. But
yeah, the only thing that the positives I got from that game was really for Notre Dame is Georgia showed us something, like as far as the DNA of who they are. We have the O-line, we have the running back, so we have that set. Now we have a quarterback. So we have the offensive front six, front seven. Now we need to get the defensive front seven. We can get that defensive front six. I think we're looking pretty good. I think we can figure that out. I think we're pretty solid as a team next year.
Yeah, that always seems to be the elusive piece. You look at Alabama, you look at Georgia, and some of these other teams. They just got these animals that it's got to screw loose, and they just these huge dudes on the D line. And if we go back to 2012, Notre Dame had that with Nix and Tuitt, and then you had Capron Lewis more with this like he's kind of this like bearded grizzly old man Rip Van Winkle kind of guy. He's like walking around with a cane or whatever. And it's like, and it reminds me of Sheldon Day too. He kind of had that like wise leader kind of vibe, maybe not like the most gifted athletically, but technique was sound and a solid leader on the field, a captain, right? And that was Capron Lewis more in 2012. And then you throw Nix and Tuitt on there. It's like, wow, and then, people like Shembo jumping in there, or who is it? Kona Schwenke would jump in, just Notre Dame had depth in 2012. And I think Kevin's hitting it on the head. It's like, you need guys like that will contribute at the next level. This is my bone throwing to the NFL here. You need guys like that, that are going to be ready to go.
Yeah, because if you looked at the roster construction going into the game, there was just the depth in itself. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. Georgia had 53 4-stars and 15 5-stars. That's 68 players on their roster were 4 or 5 stars. TCU had 17, and that was it. They had 59 3-stars. Like, you just look at that in itself. So, well, you might TCU's got 17 or 16 4-stars, 1 5-star. Okay, but what position and who's their backup? Whereas Georgia, when you have 53 4-stars, that's an entire NFL roster of 4-stars. And throwing 15 5-stars, their depth, when they have to substitute a player, there's no drop-off. You can't, quote-unquote, take advantage of a player missing. Like, for example, what Clemson did against Notre Dame when Julian Love went down. It was a significant drop-off. You're not going to see that when you face a team like a Georgia or Alabama or some of these other teams. That's why recruiting is so damn important. Yeah. Because it's great to coach up and get the most out of your players, but when you're starting at the 4 and 5-star level, it's going to be a lot easier.
And on that note, one thing I did some statistical analysis for my Bowl Mania picks, i.e. 4th place. No, I didn't win, but I did win a little bit of money. And it wasn't much, it's like whatever, I can afford a cheeseburger now. TCU, and that's a lot because inflation has made cheeseburgers expensive. TCU's 4-year recruiting average per 24/7 Sports is 38.5. Georgia 2.5.
Exactly.
Notre Dame, if anyone's interested, does anybody know what Notre Dame is?
Just outside
I've said
the top.
it all year. I've just said it all year.
For what time frame? How many years?
Last 4 years.
We're just, I'm going to say 11.
Close. 12.3.
Okay.
Not bad.
But see, I also, the rankings annually do make a difference. But for example, this year's recruiting class is ranked compared to the rest of the recruiting classes lower, but their score is higher than it's been since 2013.
Yeah.
So I think that has some statistical value too.
Yeah.
Compared to your opponents, the ranking isn't as high, but the talent on the roster is actually better.
And I don't disagree with that at all. That is how the math and the numbers work out. My thought is, I don't usually look at from year to year just because the game quote unquote changes from year to year or decade to decade, however you want to break that up. But college football is all about ranking teams relative to each other, which is why I like comparing Notre Dame to I don't like comparing Notre Dame to national champions because it tends to not work in our favor. But it is a watermark of like, look, this is kind of like where you need to improve, right? Focus on these areas, right? It's very analytical. And if anyone's in operations or manufacturing or the business majors out there, they talk about statistics and Pareto charts and the 80-20 rule, right? What's causing 80% of your issue, it's probably only like 20% of the things that you really have to worry about, right? And if we look at what Georgia's doing the last 2 years and teams before that, the LSU's and Alabama's and even Clemson, right? The last 10 years, we look at these teams and we will do this next week. Everyone is invited back on. I already told the doc, like, hey, I got some homework to do. I got to rerun the numbers. And she's like, okay. But then she also knows that after next week, I'm going to go dark until the spring game. So she's like, okay, we'll let you have your bit. And then I can really cash in on the honey-do list. But, but in all seriousness, like, Notre Dame does need to emphasize certain areas. And so when we look at the recruiting, it's like, okay, yeah, this is where we ended up this year, and we had a couple of 5-stars that slipped away and they decided to go somewhere else. And, Jesus loves them too. So peace be with them, but Notre Dame's, in that top 10 kind of area, and, we finished in 2023 per 24/7 Sports at 8, which does not suck. That's better than 12.3. Is it number one? No. At one point we were number one. But at the end of the day, look, you can be USC and Texas A&M and some of these other schools that get 5 stars, like fucking Miami is at 4th, right? Do we really think Miami is going to be a world beater? Texas clearly is not back, but somehow they ended up 3rd, right? So,
yeah.
So like, don't get me wrong, you need good players, and 5 Foot Nothing Pod has converted me over to like you'd rather get the 4 and 5 stars in and coach them up versus the 3 and 4 star and coach them up, right? Like, chances are you're going to be more successful with the guys that God has blessed with the ability to just run faster.
Yeah, because there's a reason Georgia's projecting the 3-peat, and it has nothing to do with the position. It has nothing to do with him.
Oh,
He's leaving. He's done.
Is it Nike?
So,
is it because they have Nike?
It might have to do with Nike, but no, it's because much like when we always made the joke anybody could have quarterbacked Alabama back in the mid 2000s, or not 2010s, like when that whole run started.
2015.
The string of
2015
running
is
backs
the
they
year.
had was crazy good.
That too.
2015 is the year. Jake Coker. Who the fuck is Jake Coker?
But when you're recruiting every other position at that level, the quarterback is not as consequential. But when you look at Notre Dame, it's going to be really tough, despite how good Freeman is and his emphasis on recruiting and everything else. Even with the NIL, even if it was pre-NIL, it's just going to be tough for our program to recruit at that level at all of those positions. So therefore, you really have to hone in on a generational game-changing quarterback, which we haven't had. And I've heard other people talk about it in years past. Notre Dame could very well look like Clemson if you get that Deshaun Watson, if you get that Trevor Lawrence type player, because we do have above average talent at other positions. Do we have the 53 4-stars and 15 5-stars? No, but we have good enough talent that if you just get the most important position locked down at the highest level, that's the game changer. So Georgia's going to repeat because they get all this talent everywhere else. It doesn't have to be at the quarterback position. But TCU got to where they got because of Max Duggan.
Agree. 100%.
That's
well,
where
and I think another thing with Georgia is, time will tell, and we'll see what happens with TCU here, with their program. But coaching winning percentage and coaching, year in, year out, like Georgia has had to overcome some challenges, and go up the mountain, but then fall off the mountain, but they're staying in it. And with Kirby Smart, and you have to have a good coach that does that. And Kirby Smart is a good coach, and anyone who says otherwise needs their head examined. But at the same time, it's like, look, he's taken the program and been there, done that, and now he's got 2 titles back to back, and that is very, very challenging. The last, you guys, I'm sure, I know 5 Foot Nothing Pod knows this, the last team that went back to back titles, it's Alabama in 2012. I mean, it's crazy. It doesn't happen very often. As much as good as Alabama has been in recent years, they've only done it once, which is crazy.
And talking about Kirby Smart, I know you mentioned his pregame speech earlier in the show tonight. Whether you agree with the language or not or whatever, and motivationally, obviously, it was effective, but after the game, and this was shocking to me because apparently it wasn't just one player. Multiple players on the Georgia roster commented something along the lines of people doubting them. The most famous quote was that whatever one guy said, "Those who thought we were going 7-5, look at us now, we're perfect," or something to that effect. But the line was, "You thought we were going 7-5."
Who thought that?
That the answer that has been coming back around is Kirby Smart had to have said something to these guys to get them to believe that they were going 7-5. So I did a little Fighting Irish Faithful statistical numbers work.
Oh, here we go.
Georgia was favored. They played 15 games, right? They were favored by double digits in 12 of them. So they were favored by at least 10, 12 of the 15. And the 3 that they were not were Ohio State. I have the tweet up somewhere. But it was Ohio State. And it wasn't even one of the games you would expect. It wasn't even Tennessee. They were favored by 10 against Tennessee.
Like Florida or some shit like that? Or
it was random. But in the national championship, they were favored by 13. No, I'm mistaken. They were only favored by single digits one time. It was Ohio State. It was less than 15 That's what it was. Less than 15 three times. My mistake. Less than 15 three times. National championship, Ohio State and Tennessee. And they were favored by at least 29, I think, 7 times. No, the idea that they were going 7-5 and they believed that tells me that's the difference to some extent, right? Like somehow Kirby Smart got enough of these kids to actually believe people out there thought they were going 7-5.
And I don't deny any of that. And maybe just, I mean, we're running a podcast here and we're looking at stats and numbers and data, and we are living vicariously through these guys. Don't get me wrong. And so, we're trying to soak up as much information as possible. We're reading all the stats. What's the money line? What's the spread? Et cetera. If you transport yourself back to college, as you're an 18, 19-year-old young man, and you're just going to classes, college, and you're going to practice or whatever, and it's just like, are you really paying attention to what the spread is? My hope would be no, they're not, right? Which is a good thing if you're, kind of trying to isolate your players and keep their mind, ready. And so in that sense, maybe Kirby Smart is aware of this, and they've created an environment within their program, between, football practice and maybe going to class. I don't really know how that works. That's a whole other topic. But point being, if what you're saying is 100% true, 5-0 pod, then Georgia's doing a really good job of keeping the minds of their players fresh and keeping their minds focused on their duty and their responsibilities to go out there and beat the shit out of the opponent, quite frankly, and not worrying about national media, what ESPN is saying, what Vegas is saying, or even what we're saying here on the Fighting 5-Foot Irish Nothin Faithful show, which I think we need to keep this as an annual thing, that postseason we come together and we combine 2 shows into one.
Well, and I'm glad we did it, because with my new job, my free time has been limited, and you brought it to me, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just do this, because I need to get my my thoughts out in the ether. So I appreciate it. But real quick, I found exactly what I was looking for. Nolan Smith was quoted saying they thought we were going to go 7-5, and we end up perfect. I guess I can talk trash now. And like, what? So and then I looked it up. They were favored by 23 plus points 9 times, and the only game they were a single-digit favorite was the semifinals against Ohio State. 14 other games of the 15, they were double-digit favorites.
Wow.
So somehow, some way, they had this mindset that, no, people are doubting us, let's go prove them wrong. And then you hear the pregame speech, and it's like, yes, you're getting 4- and 5-star kids. That's part of it. But coaching is still a part of it. Motivating tactics are still a part of it. It is.
You do need to have coaching. You must have good coaching. You can't be, Lane Kiffin with 4- and 5-star guys at USC and doing stupid fullback passes against Notre Dame, right? Like, that's not going to work. That was a coaching error.
Yeah, it's in-game coaching. It's preparationally coaching, motivationally coaching. All
that eliminates Brian Kelly as far as motivational coaching. So
correct. So for all, I'm waiting for, LSU didn't have all their guys. It's shocking how good they did, and blah 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 blah. And I said, I can't wait.
Does that matter though?
What?
Like them not having? I mean, it's not our fault that the players go off to the NFL. I mean,
this is at AJ. Is it Desai 4?
Yeah,
did I say that correct? Okay.
Yeah, Joshua follow. I love following my faithful Irish fans. School that I went to. I love it. But I'm sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, this is an open forum.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We
awesome.
embrace we embrace conflict within, reason here.
here's my thing. Let me turn on my light here. There we go. Here's my thing. Like, I mean, Ohio State's going to lose. I mean, obviously, Jackson Smith and Nick Jigba didn't really play. Luke Wepler, they're going to lose. Obviously, C.J. Stroud. Mayan Williams, he's gone too. But, I mean, like, it's not like they're going to have their future recruits, like, be or somewhere be a shade of them. I mean, like, probably won't see, like, a J.T. Barrett again or something like that. But then, hey, you created Justin Fields, you created C.J. Strouds of the world and all that, and then you got 2 5-star quarterbacks just sitting there, and Devin Brown and Kyle McCord. So it's not like it's not like they're suffering or anything. In my opinion, I mean, look, I respect Ohio State's program and all of that out of Columbus and all of that.
Sure.
A lot of friends go. I had a lot of friends that go out there, and
they hate Michigan too. We hate them too. It's fine.
Of course, I hate Michigan too, but I mean, I'm a fan of Jim Harbaugh, but when he was in the NFL in Stanford, I really loved him a lot there, and him going out to Michigan and helping out, the Big Ten in terms of Michigan's enrollment and all of that. How obviously with when Hook was there, Brady Hoke was there, the recruiting wasn't as top as it was when Jim Harbaugh is there, so it's just like. For me, it's like I don't look. I'm not fans of both teams at all. But I respect their programs, respect everything that they do of getting kids to the NFL. But there's got to be a balance in terms of what you say to things because Notre Dame, I really think this Sam Hartman graduate transfer is going to bring guys like Justin Jones to this school. Granted, they might not play the first year, but I really think that he might. He might just hey, I want to be a true freshman. I want to go out there and play and give my team a best chance of, winning a national championship. I would not be sad about that. I would want all hands on deck situation here at Notre Dame, and I obviously do want Ohio State to come to our house, and I do want to beat the living piss out of them. It would just mean the world to me. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're losing all these recruits. It doesn't matter who they bring in. They're still the Ohio State University, and it should be your goal to beat them whenever they walk into Notre Dame Stadium. Period.
I concur.
Doesn't matter who they have.
Well, and if you just look historically at teams in the Midwest, and AJ, I really appreciate your input, and you don't have to go on mute. That's fine. This is just something I do because I have to exercise my strong arm as co-host here. But the team in the Midwest to beat has been Ohio State. Historically, it was, Michigan, Notre Dame, Penn State kind of creeps in there every now and then. But really it's, ever since, the Tressel years, really, I mean, it's been Ohio State. And so, if we are playing them, I think that's a great thing. Notre Dame and hosting Ohio State, that's going to take some research to figure out, on Winsipedia or whatever to figure out last time Ohio State played Notre Dame at Notre Dame, if ever. I don't know the answer to that. So I bet Notre Dame and Ohio State have played, more neutral games than they have played in South Bend.
No, I agree.
Well, at least in recent years, that's for sure. So, so you're not wrong when you say, we do need to recognize who are the good teams. And so I really appreciate that Notre Dame is playing Ohio State, this coming season. We played them last year. We're in the ACC, so we get Clemson and, Florida State's, I think on the uptick, we'll see how that goes, down there. But we got Texas A&M in a couple of years. That's going to be exciting. Alabama's coming up in a few years after that. I'm encouraged to see that. Now, I'd feel better if we had Oregon on the schedule or Boise, my second favorite team, but that's just me. Hey, Notre Dame, Boise, Mile High, Colorado, do it. All right.
I would not mind that one.
Everyone would like that.
If it was in even if the game was in Idaho on that blue turf,
I love the blue turf. I will play on a
so-
Smurf turf.
It's
Smurf
nice.
turf, baby. Do it. Well, does
Yep,
Notre Dame
Smurf
even
turf.
have the
That's
balls to play on the blue field? I'll just say that. Like I don't-
Honestly, I don't even know if they'll be used to it or anything like that. That's one thing that they're gonna have to try to color their own practice squad and.
At least it's
practice
not as
green
bad as
inside.
Eastern Washington. It is literally
That
bright
is-
red. It is terrible.
Yeah, I don't even know how you would see the football on that, when it's being snapped.
It gives you a
Like-
sunburn, I will say that. Your skin becomes the color if you're like me and Polish. But okay. But yeah, no, AJ, I kind of cut you off. The bourbon is taken over, and yes, we are drinking bourbon. I know I'm kind of normally the Scotch guy, but it's the off season, and I just went to Kentucky this last weekend and got a Weller. So,
Oh no shit! Wait, you're drinking Wellers too? That's what I'm drinking.
oh, all right, that's the toast of the night. AJ, you're the toast of the night.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I went out to Lexington, and then right out of Lexington is where I believe the Wellers distillery is, one of their locations.
Yeah, it's over in Frankfurt, there, state capital.
Yeah.
Buffalo Trace,
So, yeah, Buffalo Trace is great. I got a bottle of that. I got a couple of bottles of Knob Creek. I mean, I don't really drink beer. I just rather go for the hard stuff. I mean, kind of brings the reality out of you. But last time we played Notre Dame in South Bend was when I was 2 years old on September 28th, 1996.
Yeah, that was the Eddie. I think Eddie George was still there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then before that, it was 1936. We won by a score of 7-2. So
the one thing I have to I can't stay on too much longer. I know it's probably later for you, Joe, but you're talking about next year's schedule. I wanted to bring this up. Yes, we have Ohio State. Yes, there's USC. Yes, you got Clemson. Yes, you're going to have a maybe angry Wake Forest team. But we get to warm up against Navy, Tennessee State, Central Michigan before we get to the Ohio State game. And Ohio State has holes to fill, as AJ was pointing out. If Notre Dame figures it out against the teams that they should be able to figure it out against, I don't see how we don't have high expectations starting after those 3 games going into Ohio State and looking at the rest of the season. Because really, after those games, after you go Ohio State, USC, Wake, Clemson, Stanford, Duke, Louisville, North Carolina State, Pitt. We have a really – well, actually, I don't even know if it's going to be in that order because there's some TBAs in here. But ones that are decided are August through October. I'm looking forward to a really exciting Notre Dame 2023 season.
Yeah. I think the let me put it this way. When you win your bowl game, you feel really good in the off season. When you lose your bowl game like last year, there's a lot of question marks and you're a little more critical and we should still be objective, don't get me wrong, but you feel better, hey, we finished on a high note. Does the win, in the Gator Bowl really mean anything and move plate tectonics? The answer is, of course, no. All right. And, if you really want to, be second guessing or whatever, be like, well, how many people opted out for Notre Dame, for the draft versus how many for South Carolina? You can go down that road and start, second guessing things left and right. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, as fans, we're going to say, look, this is what happened on the field. This is the game that was there. And whether people were there by injury, by suspension, or their own free will to, go work out in a weight room and get ready on their 40 time for the draft, that's their decision, right? And so it's like, look, Buckner was back. That feels good, right? Now we've got Hartman coming in. That feels good too, right? So, I really think the challenge is for Coach Freeman and for Coach Reese to figure out, okay, which one of these guys are we going to pick? Or are we going to have packages for both and we have to, manage that? I don't know. That's for them to sort out, and we'll see what happens in the weight room and in the off season and in practice and chemistry and who grasps the offense, and because that's something Buckner has the advantage of. He already has the playbook. Hartman doesn't.
Yeah, I don't see Hartman coming to Notre Dame unless he had very, very high confidence. He's going to be the guy.
Oh, I don't doubt you for a minute. And if you want, okay, people are listening to this, so I guess they want my opinion. If you listen to Fighting Irish Faithful, I'm going to say that Hartman's going to be the starter, and then Buckner's going to be, specific packages, or, God forbid, Hartman goes down with an injury, right? And then Buckner is the guy coming in. I don't know. But if you want my opinion, I'm going to say that Hartman will be the starter just based off of what you just said, Mike.
Yeah, and I'm sure the coaching staff gave him that idea as well. But the reason we had to get Hartman is because regardless of what your opinion of Tyler Buckner is, there is no way we could have gone into next year potentially running into the same situation we did this year. It's just, you could not, there was zero contingency plan. If Buckner goes down, what do we have? Nothing. Well, let's hope he doesn't.
Agree. And just having Minchie coming in or Angeli sitting in the
Angeli,
background.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just, they're without Hartman, our entire quarterback room was anywhere from a small question mark to the biggest of question marks. And that's not okay when we're at most positions right there. We have championship level kids at most positions, but the quarterback was a glaring weakness last year, and you could not.
Brady Quinn, I would say, but that's just me.
Since Brady Quinn,
yeah. I guess Deshaun Kaiser was amazing. But then I'm just like, okay, a couple of years later we got Sam Hartman. I just wish that Sam Hartman played with Chris Fink and Claypool and all those guys. I think we would have won a national championship at one point. But I just want to win a Natty so bad.
Well, and you keep listening to my show on the Fighting Irish Faithful show. I'll provide those stats and those numbers, and that is what we will talk about next week. So if anyone's new, AJ, welcome to the show. Happy you joined us. I think I threw you a follow there on Twitter. What I like doing is I don't know if I like doing this, but it seems necessary. Why are we not holding a trophy? What is Georgia doing? What is Alabama doing? What is, pick a team that's won the last 10 years. I look at what these guys do, these teams do, these coaches, whatever. What are the stats, the numbers, the output, and rank them in order of priority and preference. And we look at those and say, okay, this is how Georgia's doing, this is how Alabama's doing, this is how Notre Dame's doing, and what is the gap, and what do we need to close, for example. And some of this stuff is kind of obvious, but other things that really filters out what's important. The most important stat, total touchdowns scored. Number 2 most important stat, at least going in the 2022 season. It will change next week ever so slightly. Stay tuned for next week for that information. But the number 2 most important stat was passing touchdowns. After that was scoring defense. Yeah. Right? So it starts putting in priority, and what did these teams do from an output standpoint as far as the actual number? And then how did they rank relative to everybody else, all other 129 teams? That's what we do on my show. 5 Foot Nothin Pod is a little more analytical into kind of the personnel and a little bit of the X's and O's. We got Kevin Davis who's coming in and talking, defensive schemes and this coverage versus that, and this line front, and then Red Snapper is strong arming me as big brother.
Yeah, no, I like the idea. I mean, I've been listening to Mike's pod for about a couple of years now. On my way to work, on road trips when I'm getting my whiskeys and stuff. It's good. I love it. I love the idea of going into statistical deep dives of what scheme we should run and what type of statistics we're seeing on our defense. And this year was kind of a step back, but we started seeing a balance towards the end of the season, and that's what you want. And I think that's you want to be, if you want to be like an Alabama or Georgia in the future. I mean, their teams are super, super balanced, and good quarterback and Stetson Bennett as a walk on. He came in 2 years ago not knowing what the hell he was going to do, and Kirby Smart made him into a ball player. That is what it is, and I mean, guys like Lawrence Cager that went off to the NFL, guys like, I believe George Pickens played there, and guys like Brock Bowers are gonna go to the NFL and just kill it. I mean, we have guys in the NFL that kill it too, but we just need to get over that hump. And I think Hartman gives us that chance for his last year of eligibility. I just think that, if our guys are hot and our guys can do what Alabama and Georgia can do at the right moment, it doesn't have to be every week. It doesn't have to start in week 0. It could start within. You're 5-1. You're sitting pretty. You probably I'm just check marking the Ohio State game as a W, because I really think that this year upcoming is really super. It's going to be super special in South Bend. I'm telling y'all, man. In the Bend, it's going to be very, very super special. I don't even know what the sentence, but it's going to be super special. I haven't I was talking about this Sam Hartman might just be that quarterback since I wouldn't put him into the Sean Kaiser category, but I'd probably put him best, probably just by on paper, after Brady Quinn probably, and that was a long time ago. Ooh. And I'm just it's going to be interesting to see.
That's a high mark. That's a high watermark right there.
It is, and if he can do.
The statistically best quarterback Notre Dame's had in the modern era.
Yeah. But if he can do just 80% of what he did, I don't know what school he played at, I forgot. But if he can do what he did at his former school in the ACC, we have familiarity with the ACC. We're playing a couple of decent couple of opponents that are in the ACC. I mean, granted, we are independent. It doesn't even matter. The way that I see it, I think we're partially in the ACC, but we like to make money, so that's Notre Dame for you. But it's good because you are America's university. Alabama's not America's university. It's not Georgia. It's not
Alabama
Florida.
cannot make the draw that Notre Dame can. There's something unique about Notre Dame, and that's all why a lot of people hate Notre Dame. There's all sorts of Notre Dame fans out there, and I think that's something that's unique and special about Notre Dame. Whether you're Catholic or whether you were Irish or you grew up in the Midwest, or you had a buddy that go there or you went there. There's a lot of avenues for why someone could be a Notre Dame fan, and especially today. If you're a young person today that was born in the 80s or the 90s or whatever, there's no bandwagon for Notre Dame other than the occasional they're having a good season, but Notre Dame hasn't won a legit bowl game since the 1994 Cotton Bowl, which is the 93 season. Really, we haven't won a title since 88, right? So there's no bandwagon with Notre Dame. You have people who have made a conscientious decision to say, that is my team, this is where I'm planting my flag, and this is the hill I'm going to die on, right? Whereas I'd be very curious how many of these Alabama fans were fans before 2009. I'm just gonna say that, right?
30 to 40%.
I mean, like Michigan people, I think are fairly loyal. USC fans are trash. Ohio State fans, they're pretty loyal, but they've also been they've been successful relatively, and we kind of premised that earlier. So I'd be curious on some of these other people who are like, oh yeah, go, whatever, and it's just it's kind of like IU and basketball, if I may jump over. IU hasn't won anything big in a while, but man, people around here in Central Indiana, whatever, they love IU, and they go back
in Indy, so it's up here. I mean, people people do favor Purdue because Purdue's a hell of a team. They are a hell of a team.
And they've lost to
They're
Rutgers
doing
now
something
twice,
right
2
that
seasons in a row.
Indiana's not doing.
Purdue
doing-
lost to Rutgers
No,
2
I'm
years
just
in a
saying they're
row.
doing something right in that recruiting room that Indiana's not doing. I mean, like, I just don't get it. I mean, like, you have a former NBA coach. I mean, just open up the resource
I think they'll
chest.
get there, but I mean, like you could say the same thing for a bunch of other teams. But like my point going back to Notre Dame here is, like, if you're a Notre Dame fan, you've decided this. This is a decision you conscientiously made for a multitude of reasons. And the one reason that really matters the most, i.e. being the best team in college football, is not one of them. It's really not in recent years.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go back and, compare Notre Dame in the 40s or whatever. And, that's awesome, because, I love, Frank Leahy, but it's like, look, does that really matter? And does it have a ton of significance and relevance in 2023? Probably not. Right. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, there are multiple reasons why you did that, or you were inundated, as a child, like I'm doing with my son. We'll see.
That's a hope for mine. I hope he, can solve. I mean, I feel bad for Mike Bray tonight. I mean, he's getting a lot of hate if we were talking about Notre Dame athletics, but I feel for him. I really do. It's not easy.
I mean, that's kind of the
head
nature
coach.
of, I think, being a coach. And I do not follow Notre Dame basketball. I went to Gonzaga. I've got a degree from Gonzaga. I've been,
Cool.
I was a fan prior to attending said university and getting my degree. So, so I have a bias when it comes to college basketball, but, back to Notre Dame here, the one time they had the opportunity that was the shining city on a hill moment. And, Holtz won in year 3, Parsegian won in year 3, and Leahy, Divine won in year 3. And so it was Kelly's 3rd year, and Manti is getting Heisman talk, and, he's doing miraculous interceptions at Oklahoma and just all this crazy shit. And we go 3 overtimes with Pitt, and it's like this manifest destiny season of 2012. And then we go and face Alabama and get shellacked by 28 points.
Yeah.
Which brings me to this comparison I want to do, and then we kind of need to shut it down because it's getting late here in the East Coast here. But I want to do a comparison here of Notre Dame, Alabama versus TCU, Georgia, and some things that jumped off the page. And there are 7 things that are stupid similar between Alabama of 2012, well, it's really 2013, and Georgia, this past national champion. Running plays, Alabama 45, Georgia 44. Passing plays, 28 even. Total plays, 73 Alabama, 72 Georgia. Run percentage, almost the same, 61.6 for Alabama, Georgia 61.1. Completions, both AJ McCarron and Stetson Bennett had 20 completions. Completion percentage, both exactly 71.4%. Passing attempts per touchdown, 7 for both teams, which is really, really high, really good. Notre Dame was 36, if anyone cares, and TCU was 0. They had nothing. They had, they didn't get any passing touchdowns. Those things jumped off the page as far as what Alabama and Georgia did that were like stupid similar and almost identical. Now, what's really weird is when Alabama, you talk about a balanced team, Alabama in that game had 265 rushing yards and 264 passing yards. Now, Georgia ended up having 335 passing yards, but they had 254 rushing yards. So I think that's also just common in college football. You pass the ball more. And what's the second most important stat? Passing touchdowns. It is what it is.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's. I just look at these offenses and I watch that game. I mean, Georgia was firing under all cylinders, and to be honest, if if it was like one of those independent and Big 12 championship conference show offs, I think I like if Kansas State can do it, we can do it too. I understand.
I mean, TCU almost lost to Baylor.
Right. And I'm just like, wait a second. So, okay, I'm not one of those fans that would be like, hey, Alabama, you already lost twice. But, dude, if you're Nick Saban and you're listening to the dude at halftime talk and you don't have that, I'm pretty sure Nick Saban wanted to, put him in a headlock at that point. You're talking about my football team here, man. He's probably thinking in his head, Nick Saban is like, I want to get all these recruits right now, and I want to go out there and I want to be on that field when this chump is talking about me, like the way he was talking about. I have a lot of respect for Nick Saban. He's a tremendous head coach.
Oh, sure, and anyone who wins as many titles and puts up, and they're always part of the conversation, right? I'm just curious, again and again, where they're going to end up next season. It's kind of one of those things. And one thing I think, to kind of turn it back around to Notre Dame here versus TCU. So we did a little, comparison of how similar Alabama and Georgia were.
Game would be, yeah.
What about the discrepancy between Notre Dame and TCU in their respective games? So obviously margin and score, right? So Notre Dame put up 14, TCU 7. Okay. I would argue that Georgia was a better defense than Alabama, and that's one thing I wanted to do was to go through all 20 stats for all four teams, quote unquote, for those years and compare them, on the numbers basis of who was better and who wasn't, right? But I ran out of time and I didn't make time. But Notre Dame did pass significantly more in 2012 than what TCU did. Notre Dame only had 32 rushing yards versus TCU's 36. But Notre Dame had 270 passing yards. Notre Dame actually had more passing yards than Alabama in that Natty game, which is really weird. But Notre Dame had 302 total yards versus TCU's 188. Ouch. Turnovers, TCU had 3. Notre Dame just 1. Third down percentage, I think this is key. Notre Dame was 1 out of 4, 25%. TCU, 18%. And then scoring drives, Notre Dame, 18% versus TCU's 8%. Of all 12 possessions, all 12 times TCU had the ball, they scored 1 touchdown in the first quarter. Now, Notre Dame had 11 possessions and only scored on 2 of them, but they were in the third and fourth quarter, respectively. And what's really weird is if I kind of step back from the specific statistics and I just look at the box score and I just look at the overall complexion of the game. If I go to the TCU Georgia game, it's fairly close in the beginning. We talked about earlier in the podcast how TCU was 10-7, and that was the closest the score ever was. And then after that, forget about it. But is 17-7 at the end of the first quarter. Then 21-0, 14-0, 13-0. TCU never scored again. Now, Notre Dame isn't much better.
Nope.
Yeah, Notre Dame and Alabama isn't much better because that was a very painful time. And if you go back and you watch that game, Alabama basically scored 3 touchdowns in the first quarter. The first play of the second quarter is when Alabama punches it in. Okay, so they get credit for it technically in the second quarter, but really that drive existed in the first quarter. But for all intents and purposes of what the box score says, Alabama 14-0, then 14-0, but then it's 7-7, 7-7. So it's really weird is if you attribute that first quarter, which is really when Alabama got a shit ton of chunks of yardage and points and whatnot, and if we move that touchdown from Alabama's first touchdown of the second quarter to the first quarter, which is really when it happened. I mean, it didn't happen, but for argument's sake, if you think of it that way, Notre Dame lost the game. If you eliminate the first quarter and that other touchdown, Notre Dame lost 14-21. You can't say that about TCU Georgia because the game was significant. Now you could also say that Alabama took their foot off the gas, right? And it's like, well, look, we're up, like a shit ton at halftime. They were up 28-0, right? But I mean, if you look over at the other side of this other game we're comparing to, Georgia's up by 31 points. It was 38-7 at halftime.
Me and my boss were talking about it, and it's one of his buddies. I think I don't know who his buddy was, but he played in the NFL. I forgot what team we were talking the other day at the Houston Texans and Colts game. I'm not a Colts fan. I just wanted to go see, honestly, the Colts win so the Bears can get the number 1 pick. So that was really nice. But anyways, we're sitting there, we're talking, and it's just like, we're just like, what do you think about next week's game? Because we're sitting, right? And everyone's just like, man, TCU's going to get their ass kicked. I'm sorry for talking vulgar language here, but it's true.
Cut. We have one rule on this show, and this is where I'm going to override 5 Foot Nothin Pod. I don't know what he does on his show, but he also is respectful here. The one rule is don't break commandments. So no killing, no lying, no adultering, and no taking the Lord's name in vain. No, shit and fuck is fine.
Notre Dame grad, I will never do that. Lord and stuff.
It has nothing to do with having a diploma for Notre Dame. It's more of just like, don't break commandments.
Respect and all of that. Yeah.
It's my show, damn it. Yeah, it's my bully pulpit.
But anyways, no, I'll keep that in mind for sure. Thank you for letting me know.
That's okay. But, everyone gets one warning, and then you get booted. We've never exercised that.
Yeah, definitely. My fiance is definitely helping me work on the whole sailors. Not captain.
Is this like that scene in Rudy where Elsa is telling D-Bob to stop saying the GD blast, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. She reminds me of Elsa, and just stop. And I'm like, okay.
What are you talking about? Elsa's a wonderful person.
She is a wonderful person. And I like to put my fiance in that category.
Is your fiance named Elsa?
No.
Can we call her Elsa?
We could. I call her Elsa all the time. I'm like, oh my god, okay, Elsa. All right, I won't do it again. But yeah, I like to.
She's like AJ, and then she just shakes her head like.
Yeah. No, she'll hit me. She'll start hitting me on the back where it stings, and I'm like, oh my god, I hurt. But no, what I'm saying is that it's just, I lost track of thought, but it's just when we were talking, me and my boss, it was just I even took the spread minus 29.5, and I'm like, is this gonna hit? In the first quarter, it actually almost did, but then it hit, and then they just kept on going and going and going and going, and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm the richest man alive right now, because it was at plus 800, and I'm like, I put 30 on it, so I won 240. Thank you, Georgia. But and I'm just like,
buy some gear.
I'm sitting here, right? And I'm sitting here. Why isn't let alone Alabama, but what? Who cares about them for a second? But if they played a conference showout game, Notre Dame beats this TCO team by 2 touchdowns, 38-21.
I agree with that.
No doubt about it. We would shut Kendra and Miller down.
We have better players. Our defense, is I don't know. I didn't do a statistical breakdown between the two teams. Don't get me wrong. We could do that, but I would think that Notre Dame would have a shot against TCU. You know,
Of course, like all you need to do is just rattle Max Duggan, and then he'll just turn into Jimmy Clausen in the NFL, not in Notre Dame, but in the NFL. That's like, I mean, it's just like, okay, like I know Kendra Miller wasn't playing, but DeMarcado is not a bad pass blocking running back. He gave as much his time to Duggan as possible. But no one would get open. None of the routes developed, and I thought that, like, you know, with the guys that we had in the secondary this year and this season, I don't think TCU throws for more than 250 yards against us.
Sure.
Like,
well, and with TCU, like, you know, with how they beat Michigan, you know, with fast strike, and they were able to run between the tackles, and Kevin Davis was talking about this earlier with the front group there up, you know, for the defense, and you know, Georgia just had that advantage that TCU was unable to accommodate for. You know, you could put that on coaching, you could put that on players, you could put that on recruiting, you know, and just overall talent and score and things of that nature. And we talked about the talent discrepancy between the two teams. You know, when Notre Dame lost to Alabama, as soul crushing as that was,
oh my God. With all the stuff that was going around with the university and Manti
well,
Te'o.
and the thing is, we didn't even know that at the time. Like, I remember watching the game and just
kept under wraps.
well, and as they should, right? You know, and it came out later. Yeah. You know, if anyone hasn't seen the documentary, I'm sure most people have. You know, but it's like, I loved it. And it was a good documentary, you know, and it really brought back a lot of those memories, you know, a lot of them good, a lot of them bad. And it's just like, you watch that game, and I remember just being like, bad. Okay, well, at least we have Te'o, and he's just like walking in water, and just like looks like he's just covered in sludge, and just like what is wrong? There is definitely a spark. I remember watching this game, turning to the doc and saying, there is something wrong with Te'o. I said that to her. Little did I know that there was some real shit that had gone down in his life that, like, you couldn't even imagine this, right? Like,
getting catfished is the worst thing that could happen.
I mean, it's so terrible, and you know, and we don't want to make this all about, you know, that terrible situation, but simultaneously, it's like, and that is not the reason why Notre Dame lost. Don't get me wrong. No. Like, there was a bunch of other statistical inadequacies that Notre Dame had. But if I compare the output of Notre Dame versus Alabama and the output of TCU and Georgia, man, this Georgia just got smoked in the face. Now, whether they quote unquote didn't belong on the field, I think that's irrelevant, because there's a 14 playoff, and the money men and the people that run college football, because the NCAA doesn't really give a shit. They've come up with this 14
from my building.
Yeah. Are you downtown? Is it you downtown?
Yeah, I'm downtown. Yeah.
What are you over at the
I'm at the state of Indiana.
Well, right, but wait, what is that, like the name of your building? Like, you live at the Capitol? Or?
Yeah, I work for the state government, so I see the NCAA headquarters across the street.
I thought you were gonna say like you live at like Fountains of Canal Court or something along the canal there or something like that, but
I do live there, though. I live in Gardens of Canal Court, though.
No shit. Okay. All right. I won't. All right. Now everyone knows where you live. There. Yeah. Everyone's Googling this right now.
I'm like, hello. Just come through. I got parties.
You know that the doc and I actually tried living in that exact complex when we moved up to Indy. Gosh, what year was that? 2010? 2011? 2011. Yeah. And we just couldn't get in. So I live in Greenwood, so...
Oh, you live in Greenwood? No, nice.
Yeah,
we were. Well, me.
We'll have to meet up. All right, we have digressed. All right, let's turn it over to the co-host here, Red Snapper and 5'0" here. Regisand, please give me a thumbs down. Just let me know you're alive and you didn't just pass out. AJ's here.
I don't think you're alive after the Dolphins, man. That was such a great game.
Burn.
That was such a great game. I don't even know how you give someone a first down after he didn't even get 3 yards.
I don't know. I watched zero NFL this weekend. I played video games instead. 5'0" pod, Red Snapper. You guys there? Or you guys get crapped out?
The only thing I was going to say, you guys went on that 2012 championship game. I said the only way I could accept it and understand it, and even years later, it is kind of good that we lost, and I hate to say that. Like, you gotta.
It was a reality check,
right? And here's why. That 2012 season was a lot of smoke and mirrors, and there was
so magical though.
It was.
It felt so fucking good
to get better at, and getting his ass handed to him, as unpleasant and frustrating and everything else that was.
So bad.
It kind of set in motion what ultimately led to the last 5 years. So he had that readjustment after that season. Then he had a big readjustment after the 2016 season. Ugh. But I feel like if Notre Dame wins
that was the catalyst for me starting. That season, 2016, and I'll throw it back to you. 2016. Let me rephrase this. If 2016 never happened, I probably would never have listened to podcasts, would never have started being more aware, like self-aware of my fandom without 2016. That's how I started listening to other podcasts and then just like paying attention to what was going on and listening to what other people were talking about and like challenging any of my preconceived, sitting Indian style on the carpet watching the TV like, Notre Dame is great, and it's just like, no, we fucking suck. We're 4-8 right now and we're terrible. And why is that? That was the question. Why are we so bad? We're Notre Dame. Yeah. We should not be this bad, and we're this bad. And it's like we have the same coach that took us to the title in 2012. And now we're 4-8. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like it didn't compute for me. And so that's when I started doing the research. That's when the spreadsheet was created. A bunch of other shit started going down. I started listening to other people. And then as time went on, it's like, fuck it. I'm just going to do my own show. And here we are today.
Because Brian Kelly thought the same thing you just did. I brought this team to a national championship. What's wrong? And it was because there were some things that needed to be adjusted. And he wasn't doing it in a timely fashion to get to where the team needed to be. There were some slight adjustments, but 2016 was the culmination of, okay, I got to where I got this team very fraudulently, if you want to use that word. It wasn't as legit as we thought it might be. So I think with Freeman, if we get there, it's going to be legit, and it's not going to be, oh man, like 3 years, 4 years past that, you're going to have a 4-8 record. I don't see that.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
But I got a call tonight, guys.
Yeah, I'm getting to that point. We're over 2 hours in, men. I really appreciate you guys doing this show with me. 5-0 pod. Red Snapper 9098. AJ staying with us. Regis Sand, you've been with us the whole time, man. You are, man. You're with it, man. You're kicking ass.
He's a loyal guy. He's
a loyal listener.
He probably fell asleep, I think, but
well,
I don't know.
He hasn't given me a thumbs down, or whatever in a while. So maybe it's something else going on, but
no, but I hope everyone stays safe. Can't wait for September again.
Oh yeah,
and go Irish!
I can't wait till next week. We will podcast next week. We will take care of business. Then I promise we will have a detailed breakdown of more statistics looking at the most recent. Now we have Georgia twice, the last 10 years of national champions, and what does Notre Dame need to prioritize and execute on in 2023 season with Hartman or Buckner or whatever's going on back there. But yeah, good show.
Well, I can't make any promises to be on next week. I will be in New Jersey for training with a new company. I don't know what the evening plans are day to day. If I can, I will, but I will always listen when I can. So thank you for having me on.
That's okay. 5-0. Go ahead and do your sayonara there.
5-0. 100-0. Out.
Nice. Red Snapper, are you there? Did I lose you, my brother? I might have lost him. He was having some connection issues earlier. I really appreciate everyone jumping on. AJ, any final thoughts here? We'll give you the last word.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that we win a national championship, and I hope we get all these guys that were crystal balled for, specifically Justin. Pretty sure his name is Justin Jones. I think I forgot. It's from Illinois, but I gotta look at his name again. But like, I hope we get him at the end of this month, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the future is bright. You know, you always feel a little more positive at the end of a win. It's your bowl game, and then we won. It feels good, and there's nothing better that helps recruiting than winning. Just win.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Keep winning, and regardless of that, success draws more success. And if you're a good player, if you were great in high school, you won state or whatever, you want to keep winning. It's intoxicating, and it's your oxygen. So keep it rolling.
Oh yes, sir. Go Irish! And if you need me on for anything, just shoot me a DM. I got you.
Well, through you follow there. Thank you, AJ, for joining us on tonight's show at AJ Desai, DESAI 4 on the Twitter. Thank you for helping us out.
Yes, sir. Go Irish.
Go
Good night, everyone.
Irish. Thank you for everyone for joining us. This is episode 33 of this season, volume 85. We'll be back next week for one more breakdown of stats, and then we'll go dark for Lent coming up to the spring. Newsflash, we will have a new announcement next week with the show, so stay tuned for that. It's a little nugget for you. Go Irish, and we'll see you next week.